Hey everybody, I'm Amanda with DevExpress and welcome to today's webinar and our last 17.2 launch webinar, New in 17.2 Dashboards, Analytics, and Reports, presented by DevExpress CTO Julian Bucknall and DevExpress Technical Evangelist Paul Usher. In this session, learn how we're reshaping our data analytics product line and how you can deliver more in less time with 17.2. This session is being recorded and it will be made available on our DevExpress YouTube channel. We will also do a live Q&A at the end of this presentation. Just type your questions in the GoToWebinar control panel at any time throughout the broadcast. All right, thank you so much for joining us. I will now hand things over to Paul and Julian.
Thank you, Amanda. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to What's New in version 17.2, Dashboards, Reporting, and Data Analytics. And Amanda actually said that this was the last in our series for 17.2, but Julian, who I believe is on the call, you're going to be doing a VCL one in just a few weeks.
We kind of divide our products up into, if you like, VCL and then everything else. So we're in the end of the everything else webinars for 17.2, but you're right, in 2 weeks' time I shall be online on the Tuesday less than 2 weeks to talk about VCL. But here we are going to be talking about those wonderful analytical suites and products that we have across all runtimes. So welcome everybody, and let's see what's on the agenda.
Absolutely. We're going to start out with just some quick frequently asked questions relating to the version release, where to get it and how to install it, etc. Then I'm going to take you through what's new in reporting and then hand over to Julian for dashboard/analytics. Of course, one of the big challenges when we talk about this particular side of our components is the fact that it does touch all of the platforms. So some things we're going to show will automatically mean that, yes, it's available in the opposing platform. Other things will be pointed out specifically. A big shout out to all the people here in Sydney that attended our DevExpress meetup last night too, end of year party, and it was a blast. So I promised that we'd shout out to a few people, especially our XAF advocates and Paul, Adam and Sanjit. So hope you made it up early like you promised. Frequently asked questions, Julian. First of all, when is version 17.2 going to be available?
It is available. It's already been available for a couple of weeks now, actually. We're slightly late with presenting these What's New webinars because of Thanksgiving in the States last week. So it's there. It's in the download center, which I think is the next question.
Absolutely. So where do I get it? Now, it's interesting that this is a very frequently asked question, but if you head over to devexpress.com, you'll see in the top right-hand corner of the page, you've got this login option if you're not already signed in. When you select that, you get the ability to type in your email address and password, obviously your email address, not mine, and Secret Squirrel doesn't work. If you've forgotten your password, you can hit the I forgot my password link and it will allow you to reset it. Now, once you've actually logged into the system, you're going to see a slightly different banner showing your credential information, so your account number, and this link to download your products. Guess what, everybody? When you click that, you're going to get taken to the Download Manager page. And depending on the subscription that you actually have here, as you scroll down, you'll be able to see the different products that are available. So here I'm showing the current build of 17.2.3. With my universal subscription, and at this point I can select either the executable or the zip file for the main component installer. We do ship the product documentation separately. If you want to use the offline versions of that, they can be downloaded as well, and so can the PDBs or the developer debugging trace libraries can be downloaded. So that's how you would download the file. Just install it, close Visual Studio first, and after a few minutes, and depending on your antivirus, many minutes, you will have the latest suite. Of course, the demo center gets updated, and so you can jump straight in and see some of the cool what's new features. Another frequently asked question is, can I run it side by side? And the short answer is absolutely, although yes is a shorter answer. Now, it's a very common thing to run, say, version 17.1 at the side of 17.2 or even earlier versions, and it certainly helps with that delay, or if you need to take your time in migrating different versions, it helps a lot with that. And the final breaking changes. If you're upgrading from, say, version 15 and you want to go to 17, it's highly recommended that you go through each of the major versions. So, say, 15.2 to 16.1, 16.2, 17.1, up to 17.2. That may seem like a lot of extra steps, but because of potential breaking changes between the versions, it will minimize any trouble that you may have. Now, on the website, we do have some support files that take you through what has changed between your particular current version and your version and the latest that we're shipping. So that's quite helpful. And then the last question is, how do I upgrade my projects and what happens? Well, obviously it depends on which version of which platform you're targeting, but the DevExpress Components Project Converter, which has had some changes in the 17.2 release, will allow you to select either a single individual project or a collection of folders containing projects and allow you to run that through. Now, there's some entries in the advanced settings. For example, if I was to open a previous version of a project, I'll get prompted inside Visual Studio, do I want to run the updater? You can have this option, say, automatically process subdirectories, read-only files, which may include things that need to be checked out from source control or that are flagged as currently read-only, and whether you want backup files to be created. At that point, all you do is hit upgrade all, and the project converter will run through and update all necessary references. Now, I want to be clear here, we don't modify your source code. We don't jump into methods and say, oh, this is now changed, or you need to do this. We do not touch your main code whatsoever. What the project converter will do is upgrade all project references. So in terms of WinForms, it's going to update your CS.proj or your VB.proj file, and then your resx files. If you're talking web development, it's going to update your web config as well as your designer files to point those references. So it's a really quite useful tool when doing that. But of course, we do recommend once you've run the project converter, you do your clean and build, you check the error logs or the warnings to make sure that obsolete items are not in use, and if there are any issues, review the breaking changes, and of course contact our world-class support team for any other assistance. Okay, let's start having a look at what's new in reporting. Now, as we mentioned at the top of the webinar, reporting and dashboards affect just about every platform we have. So I'm going to be jumping between WinForms, WPF. Julian's going to focus a lot on WPF today. We'll talk about some of the web components as well. And there's a lot of different little aspects to this side of the business, because we're talking in some cases non-visual elements, we're talking from the designer perspective certain visual elements, and it gets to be just a large topic, I suppose, to cover. So what's new in Report Server? The Report Server, for those that aren't familiar, is a standalone product that allows you to generate reports on schedule. It's not designed just for developers, but for people wanting to do reporting and analytics in a more traditional term. So in version 17.2, we've seen introduction where you can now import and export your dashboard and report XML layouts between different instances of the DevExpress report server. You'll find the options are available inside the document details web page and the web designer menu. We've also added a self-service registration. Now, what this means is that you can actually have users register automatically when using Windows or an external authentication provider. It removes the need for administrators to go in there and create accounts and then allocate things. So once your user actually logs in for the first time, an account is automatically created and the user is then added to a group that's defined by the admin. On authentication, we've added support for some more authentication or external providers. We are now supporting OpenID Connect and the WS Federation protocols. So think of it in terms of you can now use Identity Server or MS Azure Active Directory to provide authentication methods to access Report Server. And finally, we've introduced optimistic document locking, which means that you no longer have to concern yourself over manually locking and unlocking any documents when you want exclusive access. On to reporting itself. I'm going to cover some performance items. I'm going to jump into the demo shortly, but we'll just look through some of these slides first. Now, performance is something that we take very seriously, and every release, and if you go back and look at the What's New webinars that we've done for the last few years, you'll hear the same rhetoric from me that performance is paramount, and the teams continuously go through and look at ways to improve, in my opinion, what's already a fantastic and well-performing product. But they're never happy. They want to squeeze every ounce of performance out of it. So for the PDF export, there's been a lot of work done, in particular around the in-memory export. It's now been optimized so that even fewer temporary objects are generated, which in turn helps things such as the garbage collector do its job more efficiently, and it's the process is therefore not taxed as much, and we've got a increase or performance in or lack of memory being consumed by that process. With PDF export as well, we now support the ability for report edit fields to be exported directly to PDF acro forms, which is quite nice. In the same vein of performance, the team have done a stellar job with the DocX, so the Microsoft Word extension export. You can see here a comparison between version 17.1 and 17.2. And in some cases you look at numbers and go, well, 115 to 87. We're talking at that point up nearly half a minute difference between some of the exports of 500,000 records. So substantial savings when you start looking at those things. And there's the different export modes that we're showing on screen. Now with the DocX export as well, there's also support now for right to left layout. You've got the ability to specify document options such as title, subject, keywords, categories, comments, and author information. We've got the option now for object and entity framework data sources, so that we've improved the support for the display of nested properties within the wizard. You can now create master detail reports directly to an object or entity framework data source with a single run of the wizard. So a lot of improvements around that area. And you can now specify the resolution in terms of DPI or DOS per inch used to rasterize vector images when you are exporting, because obviously you might want to just get that performance hit or performance benefit of the rasterization. And of course, Word doesn't necessarily support embedded vectors, but that is done for supporting DocX, RTF, XLS, XLSX, MHT, and PDF formats. What we'll do is jump over to a couple of demos just to show you some of the changes inside the reporting. Now, the first thing I want to do is show you the new report wizard templates. So here I've got just a stock standard WinForms application, and what I'm going to do is right click, if I learn to use two fingers on my mouse pad, and say add a new item. So I'm going to come across and new item. I'm going to choose the 17 or version 17.2 report wizard. Now, one of the things you'll notice is we've now got this template report sitting inside the report wizard. So I'm going to select that, and I'm going to go next. You'll see we've got a batch of invoice templates here. So there's 9 pre-baked or canned templates for you to select from. And the idea is that we've done a lot of the setup work around this. We've made it so that you don't have to go in there and format everything. You don't have to set up the formulas. We're taking away some of that extra pain. I'll select next. I'm going to just choose a quick local instance of a database, and a couple of tables from that database. These tables themselves don't necessarily relate directly to invoicing. It's more about showing you how easy it is to hook up the different structures. Across on the right-hand side, I'm seeing a list of all the fields that are currently sitting inside my template. So as I'm choosing those tables on the left, I can be conscious of what's going on or the need on the right. The important thing is this little wizard here, which is basically saying, okay, these are the template fields. What do you want to map to in your table? And so I can come through and I can say, well, in my, and I didn't select one of my other tables, but in here, we'll go vendor. I want my vendor name to be mapped directly to, and then choose the field from this particular database or table. So I can say, well, that should be mapped to name. And you'd repeat that process for all of these different elements inside the report itself. And you go next, and then you get the final dialog, which is the report options. So what currency symbol, what format are you wanting to use? Is there a discount to be applied? If so, how's it calculated? What's the range? Is it a percentage discount? Is it based on if an invoice is greater than $100, you're going to get a 10% discount, etc. So some nice little functionality built in here that will implement different formulae within the report. I'm going to select finish, and there we have in all its glory the actual report itself. I'm going to switch to one that I made earlier because I bound it to some different tables. Rule number one, don't change the parameters as you're working through presentations. But here's another one of the invoice layouts, and we can see if I was to hit preview, I'm just going to get many hundreds of pages of data bound to that table that I selected earlier. But what I want to do here is then call out to another particular feature that was added into reporting in version 17.2. And I personally think it's probably one of the most outstanding features in reporting that I've seen in a long time as far as functionality and simplicity for users. And it's what we're calling expression bindings. Now, I wrote a blog post about this a couple of weeks ago, but in essence, it's an entirely new way that we can provide data to the individual control elements on a report. So instead of using the traditional method of just binding a field, the new way is basically, it exposes so much more. It means that you don't have to worry about conditional formatting. You don't have to go through and set up things like scripts to handle certain things. And there's three different ways that binding can be done now. We have the old or just the standard data binding, which is what we call our legacy mode. We have our new expression binding in a simplified fashion, which is the new default. So whenever you create a new report file, this is going to be the one that's selected. And you then have an advanced version of that where you might need to start implementing or affecting controls still from things like a print on page event. These different methods can be set by jumping into the extra reports menu and coming down to designer options, and you'll actually see that we've got this data binding mode, and you can drop down that and select between legacy, new, etc. Now there's a couple of warnings that I just want to bring out there. The version 17.2 ships with an automatic report conversion tool so that you can upgrade all of your legacy reports to use the new binding, but please be aware that once you've upgraded, there's no going back. Now, one of the cool things, I'm not going to spend too long because we've got a lot to get through with other products, but you'll notice when I select an individual cell, so this is an extra XR table cell in my report, we've now got this new tab in the properties window called expressions. And when I select that, we're going to see all of the different elements that can be affected with expressions, in essence. So it could be that I want to say, you know what, I want to change the fall color based on some criteria. And quite simply, I can invoke the expressions editor or expression editor. I can come through and I can say inline F, and we can see I could look down the left hand side and find my operators or my functions in the list there. But as I start typing, we've got this great syntax highlighting. We've got the help popping up. So inline F, first clause true value, last clause, etc. So what I'm going to say is if, and I want to say quantity equals 1, then because I'm working on my foreground color, I want to use red. Otherwise, I want to use black as a color. Now, it's a very simple example. I mean, you obviously may do negative numbers in red, all those sorts of things. But what's really cool here is that I don't have to go off and create format conditions and try and apply rules or other things. I can do it directly on the element or the object that I want. So if I just run that, and again, it is a very primitive example for you, but you'll see straight away, I'll just increase, oops, maybe not to 500% Julian, but just increase that, and we can see that my quantity is now red. And as I said before, any of these elements that are inside this expressions tab inside properties, I can do individual expression or conditions and filtering, formatting on. So I could make things invisible, or have it apply a different style, have it change the navigation URL based on something. So very, very powerful, yet so user-friendly to actually implement in that sense. Next thing I want to do is look at specific things for WPF. Well, before I do that, let's just talk quickly about ASP.NET. Now, I know that Mehul covered this in his web presentation this week, but we've now added ASP.NET core support. It's in CTP for the report controls. So basically, you can now use the DevExpress report controls in your ASP.NET core applications targeting 4.6.1 upwards. It is CTP, and we do want the feedback to see what sort of things people are wanting to do. Certainly at the meetup we had last night, there was a lot of positive talk about what people are wanting to do with .NET Core in general. So feedback, we love to know what where you're heading with these things. There's some updates to the property grid. You can now disable property grouping, sort properties, and search for a specific property within the grid. I'm going to jump into the WPF demos. A couple of features here that I want to point out. Here we've got the reporting invoice. The same thing applies for the expression bindings inside the designer. Obviously, it works across all platforms. And you'll notice that we're using the SVG icons. SVG has been a big thing throughout this whole version 17.2 release. And with the WPF designer, one of the really cool features is the ability to actually interact with margins directly inside the designer. So here I can just change my margin. You'll see that it's going to show me in whatever, in this case it's showing inches, but whatever the layout is specified as, so if you're using centimeters or millimeters, but you can alter these margins directly in the designer, which is really cool. The other thing for the WPF designer or preview window is the page layout. So you can now actually do 2 pages or wrap pages on the layout. So if you want to just switch to that, and then you can scroll through and see your different layouts. So some nice welcome features into the WPF side of things there. The HTML5 document viewer has been optimized to support multi-page optimized with the multi-page view mode. Again, differences between 17.1 to version 17.2. It's nearly half the memory required when doing your page view. So for example, 500 megabyte or 500 record display was taking about 74 meg in version 17.1, and we've dropped that down to just over 40.3 in the new version. So there's some amazing changes, and that's as you scale up, it becomes quite impressive. So less than half what it was taking before as it goes up. The expressions editor has been updated for HTML5 side of things where you can now do code completion, validation, and we've got some improved design. There's improved support for the master detail report generator inside the web designer. And we've also got React, JS, and Angular support, including some published code examples on how you can integrate the reporting tools inside React and Angular too, because we understand that people are heading that way. Back to Visual Studio, let's just jump in here. Last thing I want to show is I'm going to create a new project, and if I choose the DevExpress template gallery, just choose OK here, come across to the ASP.NET and choose either the dashboard or the reporting web application. So when I run this wizard now, inside the report control settings, I get the option whether I want to create the designer and viewer page straight in there. So those wizards have certainly provide a lot more functionality in creating new projects and helping you along, so you don't have to go off and create those pages yourself. We've now also added NPM support, so your reporting applications can be deployed using the NPM package manager for Node.js. Just search for the package name of DevExpress reporting. Julian, I'm thinking that we should show some of the goodness that has been added for dashboards now. What do you think?
I think that's about time. So let me grab the screen, or you give me the screen, or however it works.
I shall make you presenter.
So let me just find the right screen here. Yep, there we go. And you should be seeing, well, the same slide that Paul just had. So
we never changed.
Version 17.2 dashboards. What's been going on in that area? So let me just make sure there we go. First of all, we have the CTP, the Community Technology Preview version of the WPF dashboard viewer. So just to remind you, what CTP means is it's almost a beta. Let's show you what we have. It's not all finished. There are bits missing. There are things that need polishing. Please do not use it in production, because things like the API might change as we come forward to release and so on and so forth. So I'll be showing you the CTP version of the WPF dashboard viewer. And talking of CTPs, the client-side web dashboard is now out of CTP. It's now fully published, fully released. Go and use it in your web applications. It's there, and I'll be showing you some of that as well. As part of that, we've added the web dashboard viewer for mobile as a CTP version. That's kind of fun. It's difficult, actually, doing a dashboard on a phone. So I'll be showing you how we decided to do that particular bit of functionality. The dashboard is also available on ASP.NET code from now on as a CTP. We're still testing it, and essentially this means you can use the dashboard on anywhere that you have ASP.NET code, including Linux and the Mac, although our team were very dubious about the Mac for some reason. Don't know. Various enhancements for the dashboards over all runtimes. We've added the compact themes for the web. The web dashboard title and caption have been enhanced. I'll be showing you a little bit of that. Basically, we've redesigned the dashboard title and item caption and added new customization capabilities there. You can add things like command buttons with custom icons to incorporate some kind of custom functionality for your particular dashboard. You mentioned the expression editor enhancements for reporting, and they're here as well. We offer code completion and validation, a better design, and that's all present. So what I'd like to do now, without any particular further ado, is to talk about dashboards in action. It's always best to see a demo. The very first item I'd like to present is the new WPF dashboard viewer control. Now, much like its WinForms counterpart, the WPF dashboard viewer can be used to display a dashboard based upon an existing XML file or a dashboard which is generated within Visual Studio using the dashboard designer. Now, given the most important benefit that WPF developers no longer need to have to try and wedge in some kind of WinForms-based viewer into their WPF apps, the WPF viewer actually gives you the ability to do things like load data asynchronously. We've got that in. Use WPF templates and use WPF styling and theming that we have, so you can have centralized control over your app's appearance. There are some current limitations if you want to go away and try this out. There are no dashboard parameters support yet, and not all dashboard specific APIs are present, such as applying master filtering, drill down, data access, etc. Nevertheless, we're going to take a quick tour now through the demos of the dashboard. And just to point out, you can do a lot of this exploring on your own. Basically, install version 17.2 Universal, either the trial or your active subscription. And I remind you that our dashboard products are only part of DevExpress Universal. It's not, for example, we don't have a WPF dashboard viewer for WPF, for the WPF suite. Dashboard is only part of the Universal. So you basically open up the demo center, you select dashboard, dashboard demos, and then WPF. The first dashboard I'd like to show you, says he, dragging it over from another screen, is the human resources example. It has a pretty full complement of data visualizations. Now, of course, it goes without saying, it's a viewer. I can do things like resize the panes within the view, and just like that. And first, I'm going to select different years in the grid, and notice how the other panels that are displaying visualizations of the data change according to, in fact, the row or the year that I'm selecting. So we're certainly obeying the first tenet of a dashboard, that it's updated as you're analyzing the data. Now, if I double click on a year, we're going to see the data for each month of that particular year. So again, as I go through, this time the data visualizations on the right-hand side are going to change according to the month I select rather than the year. Now, notice though, there is an new active icon in the header for the grid, and that's the ability to go back up. I've just drilled down into a particular year, and now I'm going to go back to the year display within the grid. Another way of actually analyzing this data is to select individual departments and see how the charts, the charting panels change as I move around quote within department. Although all my American viewers here are going, 44 days vacation? Where do we go to get that? Anyway.
Australia.
Australia, yes. Yeah, we're all going to move to Australia and live off pool. Let's have a quick look at the financial dashboard. This is simple enough stock example. We can select individual stocks here, and we're just showing that the chart here can display those financial charts that you use within financial applications and financial dashboards. And next up, I would like to show you this particular dashboard, the EU Trade Overview. This shows another type of visualization which we support with the WPF dashboard viewer, and that's the tree map. I can hover over individual boxes here to see the title and the value. Obviously, with this kind of tree map display, we can't show the total title, the entire title within the box. So this hover facility gives you an ability to show the title and show whatever is being calculated there. This demo also shows you a couple of other items here, filter panels. So let's select, for example, Norway. So we just display in the tree maps here, or the tree map panel, I should say, the values for Norway. And again, here we have product group selections where I can do checkbox type selection, and this is a radio button type selection. So I'm just showing you the data for food, live animals, fuels and lubricants, and goods classified by material. And again, we can just see those particular items within the data visualization part here. Another good one, talking of filters, is let's jump to the revenue by industry demo. This one shows it shows a map of the USA, so we're showing that the WPF dashboard viewer does support maps. And this one has another feature whereby we can search for individual items. So let's search for, say, travel. With a large list, this search facility is ideal for being able to quickly identify a certain item within the filter list and select it or deselect it. So that is available with the WPF dashboard viewer. In fact, it's now been added to our other dashboard viewers as well. So there is this ability to select or search through the search box. Next one I just quickly like to show you is the energy statistics demo. Nice thing about this one is, again, it's a map and I can zoom in on the map and I can select various countries just by doing that. And yeah, that's pretty much it, really. That's all I wanted to. It's actually, the other thing was, yes, it shows a grid with sparklines. So you have sparkline support for data about individual countries. So the trend lines here are sparklines within the grid. So that's, I mean, there are a lot more demos for the WPF dashboard viewer. I would encourage you to, as I say, install Universal, either trial or the real thing, and play around with the WPF dashboard viewer and see what other kind of things we can do. The dashboard designer for WPF is something that we're still discussing, especially with regard to scheduling it and when it will come out, and how quickly we're going to do it, and so on and so forth. Now, as I said before, this is a CTP. We'd love to have your feedback on it, so please play around and give us some ideas, give us some feedback. The support team are ready to help and ready to gather that feedback. Next, I want to jump over to the web dashboard viewer. Now, here, as I said, the HTML5 JavaScript dashboard viewer has moved out of CTP mode, and the designer as well, and can now be used in production environments. So here I had that human resources example that I just showed you via WPF, and here I can do exactly the same kind of things. I can select items, years within the grid here, and then the charts all update according to that particular year. And again, I can select by department and so on and so forth. So the at least we're showing that the dashboard viewer works in the same way. Next, EU trade overview. Let's have a quick look at that. Again, the tree map is available, the tree map view is available, and again I can select and deselect items via the filter panels here to show information about those particular selections. And again, as I hover, you get a little tooltip that shows you the full title plus, in this case, the amount, the value. Revenue by industry was another one I showed. Here, again, new feature. I can just, let's say, deselect all here, and then I can search for travel again, TR. I can just select travel quite quickly. The search box gives me the opportunity to zero in on a particular item within that long list. The energy statistics demo here will show you another little feature that's new in version 17.2, and that's the ability to show hyperlinks within rows within the grid. So here, the country values here have hyperlinks to, in fact, what happens to be Wikipedia. So let's click and learn about France from Wikipedia. And then I can just close that and jump back into my dashboard. So the hyperlinks can be to anything. Obviously, here we're just showing it off by linking outside, but you can certainly link within the dashboard itself and show other dashboards and so on, so forth. These demos, these web dashboard demos are, by the way, all available online on our website. No need to download the universal trial to see these. Just go to the main page, select demos and dashboards, and then or select products, dashboards, and then the web dashboard, and you'll see exactly the same display as I have here. So demos.devexpress.com. Just talking about what's new here, the web dashboard viewer for mobile devices. Let's take a look at that. Let's click on the demo here. Now, because of the limited screen real estate on small devices like your phone, we've been experimenting with different ways of showing the panels that the viewer displays. We decided that basically a multi-page swipeable layout made the most sense. So imagine my mouse cursor here is my finger on my phone, and I can swipe left and right to see the individual panels as we go through. So I can just flip. I can then say, okay, let's have a look at another year, click on the year, and then go flip through and see the charts panels for that particular year. So swiping side by side. Show another example. So what here, let's show Norway. So that's an example. So we can select individual items. So we have the filter of capability, yet another chart. We have the tree map that works within a mobile environment and mobile device. And the last one I want to show you is the, which one was it? Revenue analysis? I can't remember now. Nope, not that one. Energy consumption, maybe. Oh yes, here we go. Here's the map, and I can zoom in on the map. So that's with, okay, I'm using a mouse here, but you certainly use your double finger swipe, what's it called? Pinch and zoom and so on and so forth. And then we can move from some side to side again. So that's the mobile web dashboard viewer, and again it's CTP. There are things to still improve, still to test, still to polish, still to make sure it works, and so on and so forth. Obviously online you can just scan this QR code and go directly to this particular demo page that's encoded in that URL. So we're still fine-tuning, still twiddling with this. Please don't use it in production because things will be changing until we actually release it. A quick list of new features and enhancements. Like Paul said, we do a lot of performance enhancements in every release. We try and improve something. Here we've been trying to improve data loading and processing on the background for the dashboards. we've done some changes to the Visual Studio integration. Doesn't apply to WPF, obviously. This is WinForms and the web. Predefined templates, allowing you to create a dashboard designer or viewer application for both WinForms and web. There's now a straightforward way to create design time dashboards for display within the dashboard viewer control. And the data source configuration wizard now allows you to supply a dashboard with data from existing project data sources such as ADO.net or Entity Framework or whatever. So that's the dashboard presentation. And so I move on and time for a question and answer section. Well, you're going to say something.
Before we hit the questions, I just wanted to quickly review some of the what's new in the data access components, because obviously underpinning a lot of the controls and a lot of how things get used are controls such as data access. So in 17.2, the Entity Framework data source now has new API allowing server-side data filtering at runtime, and the data source wizards for WinForms and WPF also allow you to filter Entity Framework data source tables. We've added public API for the expression editor customization, and the expression editor GUI has been improved with rich text support for function descriptions and tooltips. The release also includes new methods for editing and adding queries at runtime using the DevExpress query builder. But the one that I'm particularly excited about, and I know that it's again something that's on everybody's lips, that word of .NET Core or .NET Standard 2.0, XPO has now got beta support for .NET Core and .NET Standard 2.0, which includes must-have features such as grouping and the integrated visual designer, to WCF support, dynamic pooling, to data caching in high-load systems. XPO is making some waves in the .NET Core world. So certainly if you are hitting that, doesn't matter whether you're running Windows desktop, ASP.NET Core, or you're running your stuff up on a Mac OS server or Linux. And it's not, you mentioned before about the team and Mac, it's more, they're not seeing a lot of people running Mac OS server.
Yes,
more so that people run up a Linux box. But certainly, if you are not familiar with XPO, it's well worth checking out inside the demos. We've also got some enhancements to the ORM data model, extending the database selection dialog with Oracle Managed Data Access Driver. And we've added a name of operator support, we've added support for the name of operator, and added thread safe parameter to the connect method. And then finally, in the connection provider, we've added support for Oracle 12c and also support for MS SQL Server 2016, introducing row-level security and dynamic data masking. So just going to throw that in at the end. There are some questions that I'm just waiting on some help from the teams to answer, but certainly I can go through some of the ones that have been provided. For example, Julian, well, one question was about dashboards for VCL, and unfortunately not happening at the moment.
No.
But
No,
email Julian.
No. Yeah.
Email Julian for all those people that want to see it in VCL, because the more emails he gets, the more angry he gets. So.
Oh, no. Just to point out that our VCL webinar, or rather webinar for VCL 17.2 is on Tuesday week. So that's Tuesday the, where are we?
14th of December.
That's Thursday.
Ah, I thought it was
Tuesday the 12th of December. I shall be talking about what's new in VCL. We have an interesting new feature, so definitely come along to that, and I'll be talking about that. But here, dashboards for VCL, no, that's something, obviously something we could consider, but not at the moment.
Very good. Other questions that came through, one from Jeffrey, can we create our own report templates? And short answer, Yes, and we're going to be adding a code example into the support center. For anybody that is interested in that, then jump on the center and the team can respond to you or reply to you with that. When will the format options added by expressions binding is available to both Visual Studio and the end user designer? So just trying to decipher part of this. So you can use the text format string property to also format the value assigned by label. Hopefully, Martin, that answers your question. Julian, you were told that your voice is too low sometimes.
No, it's I have this docking station. I don't know, but how many of our viewers here use USB-C docking? My docking station, oh my God, it suddenly decides, you know, you've been having your microphone on such and such a level for a little while, I'm going to drop it. It's just the most bizarre thing. USB-C and Thunderbolt is like wonderful until you get to the hardware. Anyway, that's by the by.
There was a question for, are we going to be looking to add a designer for the pivot grid for web? The answer is not at this stage. If you're talking about the XR pivot grid designer, like you can see in the reports. The question came in, are we going to support heat maps? We don't have any immediate plans for heat maps at this stage. Again, all great suggestions. Add to Support Center. The teams are constantly reviewing Support Center tickets. I also just want to point out that there was a small typo on one of Julian's slides. It said ASP.NET Code instead of ASP.NET Core. So the slide is definitely nice. ASP.NET Core.
Core, yep, totally agree.
And that was his IntelliSense repeating that or replacing that. What else do we have? You've already mentioned the VCL webinar. Let's have a look. There is no planned XAF webinar for what's new in 17.2 at this stage. There's a blog post that's put up so if you go to community.devexpress.com/blogs/EAF, you will find some more information on that. One of the things that we tend to ask and want to stress again, when we're planning webinars, when we're looking at what people want to see and how much technical detail people want to go in, we need to hear from our customers. So if you want us to do a presentation specifically on a deep dive on dashboards and dashboard designer, send in some emails, get in touch with Julian, who's going to put his contact details up right now. Yay. And it helps with our planning. I mean, we don't want to sit here and spend the days required for prepping for these presentations if it's not what people want to look through. So please provide some feedback. And with that, we can see if Amanda's around.
Or maybe not.
I just like to make you guys sweat.
Oh, yeah. It's like, oh, okay.
No, I was typing an answer to a question, and I apparently can't do two things at once, like unmute myself.
I see.
All right. So, like I mentioned before, today's webinar will be made available on our DevExpress YouTube channel. And also, I was just answering this question. We do have lots of XAF content on our YouTube channel. If you go to YouTube and just search XAF, you should find webinars and tutorials if you're just looking to get started. And I'll post our YouTube link here in the chat box for you. And if you missed any of our launch webinars this week, you can find them all on our YouTube channel, or you can visit devexpress.com/webinars and simply scroll to the bottom for recorded sessions. And that is it for this one. Thank you so much to Paul, Julian, and to the team. Thank you all for joining us. And of course, thank you for choosing DevExpress. Bye-bye.